Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dispersed Camping Town Hall, hosted by Mono County. I'm Paul McFarland. I'm going to be your facilitator this evening. Before we get going, I'd like to open it up and introduce Mono County Supervisor Bob Gardner. Bob, could you go ahead and unmute yourself and bring us together and introduce the translation?
Okay, thank you, Paul. Welcome everyone to our Dispersed Camping Town Hall. I'm glad everybody's taking the time to be with us tonight. I'd like to kick it real quickly to Catherine, who's going to explain how to handle the Spanish translation. Catherine?
Hi, everyone. I'm going to say this in Spanish so we can help people get onto the correct channel. Hola, les doy la bienvenida. Este acto será interpretado. Antes de empezar, nos gustaría que seleccionen el canal de idioma que corresponda. Para acceder a la interpretación en una computadora, en los controles de la reunión, en la parte inferior de la pantalla, haga clic en el globo y luego haga clic en el idioma que desee escuchar. Y para acceder a la interpretación por medio de la aplicación Zoom en su celular, en los controles de la reunión toque más y luego toque interpretación de idiomas y luego toque el idioma que desee escuchar y toque finalizado. Gracias. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, everybody, welcome again. I am Paul McFarland, and I'm going to be facilitating tonight. Hey, I know many of you. We're just waiting for our slide deck to catch up with our presentation this evening. And there we are. For those of you who wanted to change to a Spanish translation, here's how you can do it. This is what your screen will look like following on a laptop or on a desktop. Thank you, Catherine, for walking us through that. All right, Matt, you want to take us to our next slide and we'll get going. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Supervisor Bob Gardner, who got this ball rolling and is the reason we're all together today. So thank you, Bob, and take it away.
Thanks again, Paul. Again, our goal tonight is to provide information about dispersed camping, this collaborative effort and actions underway to build a better dispersed camping experience this summer. Our goal, of course, is to protect our public lands and also ensure a real positive experience for both our residents and our visitors. And when we talk about our public lands, it's really important to remember that we are doing this for lands that indeed have been for over 10,000 years and still very much are inhabited by the Paiute, Shoshone, and Timbisha peoples. These lands are called Payahunadu or Panawi by the Numu and Nui peoples, respectively. And this acknowledgement of that is in a recognition of certainly the original inhabitants of the Eastern Sierra and is done as a direct intention to show respect for our native peoples and to certainly surface the often suppressed colonial history of our country. Again, thanks to the Mono County IT and Community Development Departments for their support, plus the DeChambeau Creek Foundation for Paul's facilitation. And also thanks to all our federal, state, local, nonprofit public lands agencies for their support and cooperation in this effort, plus certainly the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power that's here tonight for their cooperation and support. I want to underscore that this whole effort is certainly not aimed at eliminating dispersed camping in the Eastern Sierra. I've engaged in dispersed camping and enjoyed it very much. Good dispersed camping is a great experience and certainly something that many of us want to continue to do. Some areas it's not appropriate, and we'll talk about some of that, but much of the Eastern Sierra, indeed most of the Eastern Sierra, is very much okay for dispersed camping. We want to be really clear about that. Good dispersed camping is an important part of recreation, and we want to support that. So again, tonight, I think our goal is to really put out information and let everybody have an opportunity to ask questions and be informed about this whole effort. So now I'll kick it back to Paul so we can get on with getting into some of the details.
Great. Thank you so much, Supervisor Gardner. So I just want to say right off the bat, we've got some questions popping up in the Q&A. I really appreciate folks taking the time to type stuff in. And we're going to be answering those as we go through tonight. We've got a broad panel of folks that have joined us from the Forest Service, DWP, Mono County, and numerous nonprofits. And so people will be getting the questions as we go. We're going to be answering questions using Q&A, the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. So if you have a question, go down, click Q&A, type it in, we will get to it. Once we get through our first 5 panelists that are going to give updates on their subcommittees, then we're going to have an open line where you can verbally ask your questions and we can have a give and take. The volume of people here tonight clearly demonstrates how much people care about this issue. Not only are many of us deeply concerned about the threat of fire and the impacts to our public lands and our communities where we live, but we also love, simply running out our back door and camping right in our big backyard. For many of us, that's why we live here, because the access to grand places is so quick. It's important to state right up front, like Supervisor Gardner did, dispersed camping is a legal and a cherished traditional use of our public lands. We simply got to figure out how to make it work. This use has definitely changed over the years from what we used to call car camping. Not only do we have an explosion of use, but we have an explosion of campers who frankly are new to camping. With Disneyland and other international destinations and basically everywhere closed last year, throngs of folks headed for the hills. And when they head for the hills, they head here. And they head here with new gear and new rings, many of them to camp for the first time ever. So the increasing use we're seeing, this use isn't new. Use has been steadily growing here in the Eastern Sierra for years, but COVID definitely kicked it up a notch. On top of the increase in tourists, we're just simply seeing an increasing number of people who either by choice or by circumstance, are the new American nomads. They're living in vehicles from Sprinter vans that cost a year's mortgage to sedans to tents. These folks are part of the changing mix of those visiting and living here in the Eastern Sierra too. Living here not only gives us that awesome access I think we all enjoy to the extensive wild public lands we've got right out our back door, but more and more, it means that we have a real stake in figuring out solutions. Not only do we need to educate folks on how to enjoy this place without ruining it for others, but we need to step up and figure out how to make this place work, frankly, so that we can continue to enjoy it. These days, it seems being a local comes with increased responsibility to be the solution. And working with this group over the past few months has honestly given me more hope than I've had in years. Hope that we can make this place work together. We can make it work for the millions who come up here to hear the mountain's good tidings, all that great in your business. We can make it work for those of us who dig in every day to make a living and stay here. And we can make it work for those who living here represents the culmination of a lifelong dream of living in one of the most beautiful places on earth. This effort that we're going to talk about tonight that we've been engaged in over the last couple months is truly a coalition of the willing. All the folks speaking tonight represent dozens and dozens of others who've come together to give their time to create actions that we can implement this summer. Frankly, we're in triage mode right now. We know this collaboration can't solve every problem this summer, but we've got to come up with things that we can do to get ahead of this. We have to get ahead of this. Complaining and pointing the finger to someone else to fix these problems isn't going to get us anywhere, because there simply isn't somebody else that we can complain to. There's only us working hand in hand with our agency partners to figure out how we can make this place work. When we started this process off last February, we created a very simple survey to identify the challenges that were before us. This survey not only identified the big challenges, fire, poop, trash, impacts to creeks and lakes, impacts to cultural heritage sites and wildlife habitat, impacts to our communities where we live, but it also identified hotspots where the problems are concentrated. And then working off this shared understanding of what the problem is, the group, which frankly started out with about 70 of us on a Zoom meeting in February, split into 5 separate subcommittees, each one tasked with identifying actions we could implement this summer. Like I said, this is triage. We're focused on what we can do now. So these committees, each one headed up by an Eastside local: education, mapping, stewardship, infrastructure, enforcement, and policy. And tonight we're going to hear from the leaders of each of these groups on the actions that the groups have identified. Following each subcommittee leader, like I mentioned before, we'll answer questions using the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen. So to go down there, click on Q&A. I see people are actively doing this as we go, and we're getting answers to them. That's great. Thanks. So use that Q&A feature. We'll bring those questions forward at the end of each subcommittee report. For those of you in Facebook Live, please type your questions into the comments area and we'll bring them forward to the panel. And then following all the different subcommittee leaders, we're going to open the floor to all of you so that you can ask questions using the raised hand feature that's down at the bottom of your screen. Click on raised hands and we'll get to you in the order in which your hands are raised. You know, we're all part of making this work. We really need your ideas and input and energy to make this happen. Again, back to that triage theme. You know, tonight's meeting is just another part of an ongoing conversation about how to make this place work with increasing numbers of people and decreasing capacity. You know, it goes without saying, but there's high passions that this issue and all public lands recreation issues can stoke. So I just want to remind all of us to treat one another as you would like to be treated. Be respectful. Please be constructive in your comments. And, you know, let's get this done, because I want to continue to enjoy going outside in this place and seeing unburned hillsides and clean creeks and lakes for a long time. And I want to give that to my kids. And I know many of you do as well. So it's up to us to make this work. And with that, I want to turn it over to our first presenter, who is Mono County's own Economic Development Director, Alicia Vanos, who stepped up to head our education subcommittee. Alicia, please unmute yourself and take it away.
Well, hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay, Paul?
You're great.
Oh, good, good. So it's Alicia Venice. I'm here representing Mono County Economic Development and Tourism, and I've had really the distinct privilege of working with the Education Subcommittee, which is made up of about 20 very enthusiastic, knowledgeable participants from our land management agencies and a wide range of visitor interfacing organizations and small businesses in both Mono and Inyo counties. You know, our purpose, it's on the slide here, but I'll just read it because it kind of sets the tone. Our goal was to establish consistent, effective messaging that educates the public on responsible, safe, dispersed camping practices and proactive stewardship of the Eastern Sierra. So we spent at the outset a significant amount of time doing research. Sarah Kaufman, Lara Kaler from Mammoth Lakes Tourism, and a bunch of other folks on the subcommittee did a lot of research combing through many websites and platforms that have dispersed camping do's and don'ts and best practices on camping. We found, not unsurprisingly, that excellent information regarding dispersed camping exists within our own Eastern Sierra agencies and visitor organizations. It's just that it just isn't in one easy to find location. So very, very challenging for the public to find this information. And so from this research, we identified the most important best practices. We condensed them, worked really hard on making them as succinct as possible. And then we put this information into print materials for the public. So all the educational materials produced will drive folks to the essrp.org/camping website, a URL with a QR code. You'll hear more about that the next subcommittee report. And on that website is where additional information and the interactive map lives. So, and as well, the printed materials will also be translated into Spanish. So as this education subcommittee worked through and determined the key points, we found ourselves kind of taking on this sort of lecturing tone. And of course, as everyone knows, especially parents of teenagers, lecturing causes eyes to glaze over and you can basically say goodbye to your audience. So we tried to lighten up the tone a bit and have some fun with the Camp Like a Pro theme. You'll see that on the right side of the slide, Camp Like a Pro. Kind of appealing to folks' innate desire to do things right and keeping the tone light without detracting from the gravity of the message. So first and foremost, our education information is always to encourage people to please camp in a developed campground. That's our first message. We have over 160 campgrounds in the Eastern Sierra. Some are walk-in, some are reserved in advance. I know sometimes they're tough to get, but this is hands down the best way to have a positive camping experience while creating, you know, the least amount of stress and impact on our beautiful and pristine landscape. So then with respect to dispersed camping, if folks wish to camp outside a developed campground, we came up with the basic points that we wanted to get across. Here is how to camp like a pro. So pros prepare in advance. Know before you go. Where can you camp? More importantly, where can you not camp? Again, all materials will direct people to the essrp.org/camping website and the map through a QR code. You know, the next point, how and where to select a campsite, a dispersed campsite like a pro. There's information about that in the educational materials. Obviously, pack it in, pack it out reminders. All waste must be taken with you, including toilet paper. We just can't stand seeing those toilet paper streamers everywhere. Food scraps, you know, no one wants to see your orange peels. Pet waste and so on. And then super critical, pro campfire safety skills are all laid out with extra emphasis on checking fire restrictions at the essrp.com website. And then finally, the number 2 issue, your number 2 issue, has become our number 1 issue. So poo like a pro with instructions on where and how to relieve yourself in a dispersed camping area. Our main printed piece will be the 4x9 rack card you see here on the slide. It'll be translated, as I mentioned, into Spanish and distributed through all the visitor agencies throughout the Eastern Sierra. We're also building a toolkit for local visitor interfacing agencies and organizations and small businesses that may wish to upload the educational information to their respective websites and platforms. The toolkit will have the graphic elements for Camp Like a Pro, social media post suggestions, camping images, as well as an 11x17 poster to print out and post. And in this way, like, we have a massive outreach machine throughout the Eastern Sierra with everyone spreading the same message. And finally, we've created an 8.5x11 downloadable single sheet for folks to download and print if they want something in hand. On the front side are all the key best practices that I just went over, along with a bright red banner at the top reminding everyone to check current fire restrictions. The reverse side is a list of regional visitor resource contacts, including, of course, the Forest Service Agency, BLM, visitor centers, medical and hospital contact information, road conditions, and so on. So, and again, all the educational materials that are printed or in this format, all direct the public to the interactive map on the essrp.org/camping website through the QR code. And actually, that's probably a great segue to Matt Perolo and our friends on the Map and Website Committee. So before we go there, I'm certainly happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, so Alicia, we had one question. Actually, where can people find this information? The Poo Like a Pro signs, and what are our plans for getting that message out there? I know you touched on this a little bit, but can you just reiterate that a bit?
Yeah, so the main print piece will be a 4x9 rack card. That will be available through, you know, basically all the visitor interfacing organizations throughout the 395 corridor, through small businesses.
A los negocios pequeños.
Thank you. And,
Gracias.
and then social media, of course.
Y redes sociales también.
Paul, should we have our interpreter?
Paul, vamos a tener la intérprete.
Yes, go ahead.
Sí, siga.
You have a question, Portia? Go ahead, Alicia.
Okay. So we'll have our 4x9 rack card. That'll be the printed piece. We'll have the downloadable 8.5 by 11 that's available through the essrp.com/camping website. We'll have social media outreach as well on various platforms, basically all agencies and small businesses that are interested. Hope that answers the question. There'll be
Yeah,
at
we've got-
11.
Yeah, we have a specific question about the Camp Like a Pro. Are we sharing it, of course, to Facebook communities, but are we also providing this to like Dick's Sporting Goods, Big Five, RV rental companies? I think, like I said in the beginning, we're in triage mode. So one of the things we're looking for are ideas like this, but we're also looking for help to try to get this out. And so,
Yeah. So-
honestly, for people to help make it viral. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing that we're going to do along those lines is, reaching out to the third party, businesses that are, involved in the outdoor recreation industry, but also looking at all of the third party independent websites that talk about free camping, camp anywhere, kind of messaging. We will be reaching out to them to try to build some relationships there and share with them the thoughtful and sort of best practices on dispersed camping. Obviously, the website, try to get them to convey the information we want them to convey through to their audiences. So maybe that helps too. And I see another question here. You mentioned 160 campgrounds in the area. How many are privately owned? What is the county doing to work with private landowners to create more lodging opportunities? So 160 campgrounds, off the top of my head, I would say probably 30 or so are privately owned at the most. And then private landowners to create more lodging opportunities. I'm not sure that the county is working with private landowners on that program. With respect to community development, I think working with private owners to, create sort of granny suites and that kind of thing. I don't know, maybe Bob Gardner, Supervisor Gardner, maybe you have more information on that, but I'm not too
I'm
sure.
not sure. I think that's maybe an idea we can work on, is to again, as Paul says, that's something we can pursue. It's a good idea to make sure we're reaching out to our private campgrounds.
And that was reaching out to private campers. We'll talk about that a little bit when Matt talks about his map. We very deliberately included private as well as public campgrounds on the map to direct people to. I just want one more housekeeping issue. Just remind folks that if they have questions at this point in the presentation, to please use the Q&A button at the bottom. We will get to raised hands when we have finished with the 5 presenters, and then we'll have an open Q&A session from there. We have another question in the Q&A about has the county or anybody on this group reached out to Instagram influencers? That world is somewhat nebulous to me. So is there anyone younger?
I love your laugh, Paul. So yeah, influencers are part of the social, media outreach that Mammoth Lakes Tourism has as part of their campaign and outreach programs. The same thing with Mono County Tourism. We have worked with influencers. I think it's an exceptional idea in terms of getting this kind of messaging out regarding best practices for dispersed camping. So super idea.
Thanks. And another one, have we reached out to the LA Times, PBS, Southern California? And I'll just say, yes to all those. That's why we've pushed so hard to get these messages and this material done before Memorial Day. I just want to emphasize that we've been moving as fast as we can to get this stuff not only vetted by, and when I say vetted, I mean reviewed. This is a community effort. Everybody's given ideas. They've reviewed this verbiage. So we're trying to come up with something that has broad support. So it's taken us some months to get to this point, and now we're starting to go out with it. But you're right, we got to get this into the LA media market. We got to get it up to Reno. We've got to get it out there. We need to get it at the front desks of the visitor centers, as well as, you know, the hardware store here in town, Beaver Sporting Goods. We've got to get it out to as many places as we can. And, you know, thanks to the education group and Alicia, who've made it possible for us to actually have something to hand out. So thank you very much. And I want to thank the panelists also for diving in and answering Q&A questions. Please keep those rolling. I just want to let folks know we've got 185 people joining us today. So thank you. That's more than were at my kids' Little League game tonight. So this must be a popular event, which is awesome. And not only are we hoping to educate people on how to get out there with the main goal of getting them into designated campgrounds, but we also want to let them know where they can go. And the key to where is having a good map. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Matt Perullo, Recreation Coordinator for the town of Mammoth Lakes and Mono County, to talk about the mapping program that him and his subcommittee took on, which was a great lift and is something that I've never seen all in one place before. So Matt, would you like to unmute yourself and take it away?
Yeah, thank you so much, Alicia, for breaking down the education groups, some of the outcomes, and really the across interjurisdictional collaboration you pulled together for that. And thank you, Paul and Supervisor Gardner, for bringing us all together for this purpose. The purpose of the mapping subcommittee was to produce a mapping product for both internal or agency use, such as visitor center staff, as well as externally by the public, that supports the education, infrastructure, stewardship, and enforcement tracks of this collaborative, and which represents current existing policy, and that's important. The map is not intended to promote dispersed camping nor to prohibit it, but to sort of demystify this patchwork of ownership and different policies that are in place throughout the Eastern Sierra. Providing accurate and reliable information to public lands users that encourages responsible, sustainable, and legal recreation. Excuse me. The map efforts of the mapping committee focused on first developing a GIS digital map resource, which there's a screen capture of on the slide here. And this map is intended to direct users to existing private and public campgrounds, like Paul mentioned, visitor centers, RV dump stations, and other amenities that are going to be useful to have a responsible and sustainable experience out here. And important to note that, you know, while each agency and organization has, you know, their own materials and their own maps and things to share, I don't know of one place where it was centered before. And so that was kind of a purpose to start with a GIS effort that we can manipulate and make edits to over time, understanding that changes will be needed, you know, over time, and corrections will need to be made. Another purpose of the mapping product was to provide a visual representation of land management units and their current policy, because depending on where you're standing in the Eastern Sierra, you could have one leg in City of Los Angeles private property, no campfires, no stoves, no overnight camping, and 1 foot in Inyo National Forest, where, depending on where you're standing in the forest, policy can differ and camping can be prohibited, allowed with different uses and different permits. So it really all depends. And then another purpose of the map was to provide education tools and links to agency managed websites, required permits, and other important alerts and notices specific to each land management unit. So as fire restrictions are in place, we will update that to this map as well as to the website, which I'll show you in a moment. It's an effort to try to keep up with changes in more real time. So with the help of Mono County IT department and really just a massive lift from Mammoth Lakes Trails and Public Access Foundation, the collaborative was able to generate a purpose-driven webpage at essrp.org/camping, which Alicia mentioned. to host the GIS map, as well as the educational messaging developed by the education subcommittee. And really important that we want this map to always be accompanied by those educational tools. So we're providing the how as well as the where as it relates to policy specifically and legality. Excuse me. Sorry, I am by far the worst millennial ever and running the show here on the computer. So hopefully you can see the web page now. I'll assume yes, unless I hear otherwise. So I'll scroll through the web page right now. Really great branding that came out of the education subcommittee. Thank you, Paul, for confirming. At the top of this page, there's a banner here, fire restrictions effective May 24th, 2021. So this order just went in place. This is recent news. Trying to interface everything. So a click of a button will take you to the most up-to-date information. In this case, it's a joint press release issued by the Bureau of Land Management and Inyo National Forest. This banner sort of floats as you scroll through. Brief boilerplate language on, must know how to camp like a pro information. Again, trying to drive folks as much as possible to staying in established campgrounds, realizing that's not always an option if campgrounds are full, or perhaps somebody is just adamant on, roughing it, Mark Twain style, and getting out there away from developed campgrounds. But we really want to, direct folks to those system facilities wherever possible. Pros prepare. Again, Alicia, thanks again for going over this. And a downloadable 8.5 by 11 Camp Like a Pro, that material that was shared is available for folks to print out with a click of a button here on the webpage if you're looking for it. And then again, fire restrictions, poo like a pro. Scrolling down, really the purpose of the webpage is more than anything to host this GIS map with a really nice legend. Again, bold legend here for campgrounds, visitor centers, RV parks, RV dumps, those things that people need to know to keep these facilities clean and pristine. And a brief tour of the map. So with so many different policies and different management in place, the committee decided to, as much as possible, simplify and to sort of flatten this layer. In a way, red means no, right? So if you click on this, in this case, we have Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, City of LA property, no camping, no fires, no stoves. The land is available for low impact recreational day use only. Camping and the use of fires and stoves are prohibited. And that's all the time. That's not a forest order or a fire restriction order. That's all the time on DWP land. And so we're trying to call out and bring out that City of Los Angeles property so we can realistically expect folks to know where they are. And then in the June Lake Loop here, another great example, recreation restricted area. This is, there's several of these areas throughout Inyo National Forest, generally around communities and up canyons where developed recreation is already offered in developed campsites. I did see some questions in the chat bar I'll try to get to now or at the end of the presentation about buffer around communities. But effectively, what is in place right now is in forest order. It's a recreation restricted area, and users are not allowed to overnight camp except in developed recreation areas. And each of these pop-outs here has more information. So if you click a link, it's going to take you right to the agency website and provide you a list of those agency campgrounds that are available. If you kind of zoom in past the 30,000 foot level, you'll see different campgrounds and offerings, RV hookups, as well as standard primitive campgrounds. If you click any one of those links, it'll take you right to the reservation page at recreation.gov, so you can make that reservation. And I'll cruise down to Mammoth here real quickly because I know we have a good private campground under permit with the forest. And same thing there, we've got information on private campgrounds and where to stay and how to do it. One of the questions we've been receiving throughout this whole process is static maps, need for printed out materials. At this point, I fully anticipate and expect that there will be edits needed to be made to this GIS product. So it was a pretty sizable lift just to really aggregate all of those different GIS layers and condense and confirm all of the policy that was in place, for this effort. So coming out of this, working with land management units and working with local communities, we would like to consider static handouts, maps, brochures, potentially kiosks, gateway kiosks at communities to really solidify, this mapping product as well as the education tools that Alicia presented.
So, Matt, we have one question over here in Q&A about when will we be able to have this as a live mobile app that actually shows your location?
Yeah, thank you very much. So we've been working right up to the 0 hour here on, adding edits and recommendations and substitutions to make this as user-friendly as possible. That said, a couple outcomes in addition to static maps is GPS location and potentially a downloadable offline use layer or map that you can take with you, plug right into Google Maps, and then if you are up Canyon and out of service, you'd still basically have this map functionality at your disposal, so you can know where you are in real time with GPS location. So TBD on that, but it is on our tasker list and something that we need to work through some of the IT and some facets with the land managers as well.
Yeah, again, just to emphasize that message, we're trying to get these materials out as quick as we can, and just pulling all these existing closures into one place has been a lift, but it's been done. So thank you so much, Matt, and your subcommittee. Andrew Mulford from MLTPA was instrumental in making this happen, as well as folks with the Forest Service and the BLM, which provided a lot of background information. I'm actually going to see it's time to move from mapping down to stewardship, because one analogy you could use for where we live is we live in one of the most popular restaurants in the world, and we're having trouble doing the dishes. And that's where stewardship comes in, because as everybody knows, there's nothing worse than a kitchen full of dirty dishes. And we've got to get out and clean them up and take matters directly and get it done. And we've had this stewardship group led by Alex Ertol of Friends of the Inyo. Alex, would you like to give everybody an update on what you and your group have done?
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul and Matt and Alicia, and to everyone out here. As Paul was saying, one of the tracks or subcommittees that he kind of highlighted was a stewardship one. And as the purpose lists here on the slide, and I'll reread it, to enhance education management presence and restoration through partnerships, with efforts focused on compiling an inventory of existing group assets and community resources to enable improved management by agencies and the public. So what that all means is, how are we going to take care of the land? And how are we going to do those dirty dishes, as Paul mentioned? And in this case, more broadly, but also as it concerns a lot of those front country dispersed camping areas. In getting together everybody, the land management agencies and the volunteer groups, the one thing that we found is, we're in pretty good shape. We have a lot of really good work happening out on the ground between the agencies, nonprofits in the area like Friends of the Inyo or Mammoth Lakes Recreation, as well as counties and municipalities, Town of Mammoth Lakes and Mono County doing a great job, Inyo County, down in Inyo County, the Alabama Hills Stewardship Group, another nonprofit doing great work. Too many to mention, but we found that, hey, we're doing a lot of great stuff out on the ground already. We really just need to communicate a little bit better with each other, kind of work smarter to work harder, and really stretch the resources that we already have and we're already putting into the problem as far as we can to do some great work out on the ground. Some things that we highlighted that would be really helpful would be some sort of collective group volunteer calendar for volunteer events. There are a lot of groups out there that do volunteer events throughout the summer and throughout the year for folks that want to come out, give back, spend, you know, a morning to maybe a whole day giving back to their public lands. And really the purpose there is to do great work and help the cleanup, but also create a culture of stewardship within our community and show folks that it really feels really good to give back, and is something that can be done pretty easily by picking up trash or raking out a campfire ring where it's not supposed to be, under the right supervision, of course. And making those steps, those tangible steps towards giving back to the places we care about. The second was creating a group list of assets between everybody to see what opportunities we have out there for folks to give back and what kind of on the ground presence we have. I think we saw that the stewardship group was also a great place for that information that Alicia and Matt and their groups came out with from the education subcommittee and the mapping subcommittee to put those out into the world. And, you know, unfortunately, as we know, sometimes people don't read signs that they should. And so sometimes the best way to make a imprint on someone with regards to these things is to have a little face-to-face interaction, talk to people where they are, and send the message home also through action. And that's where I think it's helpful to know who has those abilities to go out and pick up trash, have qualified staff taking out campfirings. You know, this picture above here is a great example of, you know, those folks camping there probably learned a lot just by having that Forest Service employee come in and do some work in front of them, and you know, a really great teachable moment for them there. So we want to try and get as much out of what we already have available. So a lot of coordination was worked on. And then finally, we wanted to come up with a way for folks to engage on a more permanent level. You know, I think the one thing that we're seeing here with so many participants is that the local community really cares about the places that we love and this dispersed camping and taking care of the places that we live in. And so we're hoping to offer some more long-term kind of engagement opportunities for folks as it pertains to stewardship. So beyond just the one day of giving back, you know, maybe once a month or twice a month at these volunteer days, but Kim Anaclario with Mammoth Lakes Recreation and Matt Perullo with Mono County and Town of Mammoth Lakes have come up with some really great resources for their Adopt a Trails program that they've been doing. And so we're kind of looking to, and I think I saw Matt and Kim kind of put that up to adopt a porta potty or adopt a trailhead to kind of bring that more to the areas that are being really, really hit. Oh, is adopt a dumpster, sorry. Adopt a dumpster, adopt a potty, to places that are really being hard hit and that could use those extra infrastructure things that I believe is going to be discussed here shortly. So really providing people the opportunity to give back on a more permanent basis, a more long-lasting basis. If you want to be a rock star volunteer and come out, you know, every week for the summertime, you can do that. And so we're working on identifying more places that could use that long-term love and putting them up on a website so that way people can figure out who they need to talk to give back to that. So my understanding is it is on that essrp.org/camping website right now, as well as a link to the Volunteer Eastern Sierra calendar website where you can see all the great opportunities for folks to volunteer from Lone Pine all the way up to Walker here in the Eastern Sierra. And so we're working to make that more robust and make more offerings on that webpage. That way, if folks want to give back and they're in the area, either local or visiting, they have no reason to say like, oh, well, I didn't know what was going on, or we can tap into that enthusiasm for the great places that they enjoy right there and then. So,
so Alex, we've got a question over here from Deb. Actually, she states, people are talking about creating a trained volunteer corps to patrol for illegal campfires in the evenings, since the Forest Service and BLM don't have the staff to do this. I'll go ahead and note that, you know, one of the things we're going to hear when we get to the enforcement section is a word of caution to, you know, not take enforcement matters into one's own hands and to contact people, because as everybody knows, for many folks, civility is in short supply, and it seems to be getting shorter as you get later into the evening for some people. So I do know that, for example, here in Lee Vining and in Mono City, our 2 local volunteer fire departments are stepping up, and we're doing patrols in our fire trucks at night now that we're in fire restrictions, to identify areas outside of campgrounds where people shouldn't have fires. We don't plan on confronting people, we plan on reporting these. And so, Deb, I think your solution is great. It's worked really well in other places. I know Big Sur has some similar efforts. But one of the things that Alex emphasized, and I know we've talked about, is really the need to strengthen that bridge between the public and the agencies, so we can give people a way to give back, because so many people want to help, but we have to give them a way to do it that is safe, that's repeatable, and that is done to, you know, a standard that we can all be proud of. And I think that we can definitely get there. So keep that energy. Let's figure out how to do this. Just looking here through the chat for other questions, or through the Q&A for questions about stewardship. Thanks for the props about the site. And Alex, do you have anything you want to close with?
No, I think you really hit it on the nail on the head there, Paul, in terms of creating that bridge. And that's that third note there. We're really going to be working hard. You know, we worked to get the first 2 things up for this summertime before Memorial Day, as Paul mentioned. But going forward, we really want to identify a kind of funnel to really get people trained up if they want to go out, and make sure they're doing it right, to the right standard, under good supervision, to be able to help us with the never-ending work that's out there. So stay tuned for that, and we're hoping to have some really good things coming out. Maybe not for this summer, but definitely for years to come.
We do have another comment over here in the Q&A about, is there a place where people can send photos, you know, I'm assuming an online place where people can send photos and reports of people breaking the law or abusing the land? And as far as I know, there isn't one outside of social media here in the Eastern Sierra. I do know that there are some local efforts up and down the valley. There's one out of Starlight, and there's one here in the Mono Basin that are being created to kind of get that word out and, you know, help share where things are happening in real time. And so, you know, a lot of those efforts they're truly grassroots. They're being driven by the ground. So thank you so much, Alex, for that. I think I'm going to move us on to infrastructure. And thanks, man. And the infrastructure program subcommittee was headed up by Mammoth Town Councilman John Wentworth, along with a heavy lift from Rick Cattleman and Kim from Mammoth Lakes Recreation. So let's switch this slide up to infrastructure, and Mr. Wentworth, please unmute yourself and take it away.
Thank you, Mr. McFarland. I really appreciate all the formality here this evening. We're going to get a little informal, and we're going to talk about, to follow that dishes analogy, just where that obviously goes, where do we put the refuse? Where do we put this stuff that needs to go somewhere else? The trash, the bottles, the stuff, the diapers, the unmentionables, where's all that stuff going to go? And that was the specific charge of the infrastructure subcommittee. And I want to just call out a couple of kudos, a couple of credits of folks that really deserve the credit for this. It was so great to have BLM with us, Forest Service with us, but also especially Caltrans. And I think a lot of us in the Eastern Sierra, we feel that always nagging problem of being underrepresented back in California and the rest of the state, and between the Sierra Nevada Conservancy and Caltrans, those are the 2 state agencies that we hold closest. And I certainly want to call out and acknowledge and bow down to Rick Cattleman, who did just excellent work with putting together a map and a spreadsheet that identified where are all the opportunities going to be to put a dumpster, to put a porta potty that can specifically help to address the challenges with the dispersed camping audience. And as we've said all evening, dispersed camping is a legal activity on federal public land, a much loved activity in federal public land, but we want to help folks really learn and practice their skills to camp like a pro. So with that in mind, I want to introduce Kim Anaclerio, who's going to give you a little bit of background about how you can follow in the very large footsteps of some folks who I'm going to call out here tonight. I hope they're getting ready to blush. Lynn Greer at June Lake Junction. She's already stepped up, and she's going to be sponsoring a dumpster and perhaps a porta potty at her beautiful and unique establishment there on the way into June Lake Junction. Also, Sarah and Justin Walsh at the June Lake Brewery have stepped up, and they're supporting a dumpster and or a portable restroom. And the Dushambeau Creek Foundation has contributed $5,000 to pay for infrastructure this summer. Other contributions are being requested. I know they're going to be coming in. And Kim Anaclerio and her team, the Kim Anaclerio team, have got the pieces in place here so that if you want to contribute, if you want to sponsor a dumpster, if you want to help us give a place to put all that stuff, Kim's going to help you make that possible, and you're going to feel good about this. Kim, let everybody know how they're going to feel good.
Thanks, John. I'm Kim Anaclerio, Program Director for Mammoth Lakes Recreation. We're happy to be a nonprofit partnering with this effort. As John mentioned, the infrastructure team identified several locations that could use some love out there. And so we created a Adopt a Dumpster and Adopt a Potty program because we need help taking these ideas to the ground. So you can go to the website you're seeing on the screen right now, mammothlakesrecreation.org/camping. And you'll have the opportunity to adopt a trash dumpster or a porta potty for the season. That adoption will provide weekly service for the next 5 months. And you also have the opportunity to make a donation of any amount. And that can go to just increasing service for our current facilities, or possibly we can add more. So my contact information is on the bottom of that page. Please reach out with any questions, and we appreciate your help with this effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. That's exactly the kind of thing that MLR was intended to do. It's great to see all these things converging to coming together in this great effort. So that's dumpsters and what are we calling these things, Kim? Porta potties, adopt a potty, adopt a porta.
Adopt a potty.
Adopt a potty. Okay, good. Good. Well, great. Next slide, please. And part of the infrastructure subcommittee's efforts, we were involved a little bit in the mapping, and that got taken over by the Great Mapping Committee. And I just want to call out Kirsten Poussin from MLTPA, who built the webpage. She did just such a great job with that. But the signage is a key part of this. The signage needs to be that on-the-ground complement to the maps that reinforces and reminds everybody when they get to a certain place to know what they can do and what they shouldn't do. And Matt Perillo has just done great work with this effort. And I'd like to, if I can, Matt, just bring you on and have them walk folks through a little bit about the relationship of the signs to the map and how all of these systems work together to help all the visitors and all of us locally really learn how to camp like pros. So tell us what we need to know.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. And I'll have one go back question for you related to dumpsters and porta potty infrastructure at the end. If I forget, remind me.
Yep.
Like John said, signage is an important part of infrastructure. It's meant to complement the map and be the on-the-ground aspect, so folks know where they're standing, and there's it's readily available information. There is such a thing as sign clutter, which we want to avoid. However, you know, to be fair, if I were out on the land and, you know, didn't really dive in on my research and delve through several maps and policy, it would be hard to know what the policy is, where you're standing. And so we'd like to get these signs in the ground. The example shown is a standard Forest Service type sign. There will be others. We'll work with the Forest Service, Mono County, Town of Mammoth Lakes, Friends of the Inyo, numerous other nonprofits, volunteers. The June Lake Trail Committee has stepped up in this respect. Apologies if I've left any out, but it's really all hands on deck to get this infrastructure in the ground, really as soon as possible, and then to maintain it over time, because we know these signs have a tendency to walk now and then, or to be hit by plow in some cases. So upkeep is another important aspect of this. So the sign you're seeing is approved Forest Service signage. We'll get it in the ground. One idea that was thrown out there was use of a QR code. I saw some questions in the Q&A throughout the presentation about getting information kind of on the landscape itself. One idea was gateway kiosks, interp panels. Another is providing this information on the signage itself, so we can redirect folks to developed recreation sites or areas where they can camp sustainably. So we'll be hitting the ground hard in the near future, getting these installed. One of the answers I questioned, or one of the questions I answered, was about how to get involved. My email is in the chat bar, and we'll provide more contact information. So if you'd like to get involved, chances are we have something set up for you to help out in this aspect. And thank you very much, John. And the question I fielded from the chat bar was, where are the porta potties and dumpsters going? And I think you answered it, but if you could maybe provide just a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I think that I'll leave that to those folks throughout the region who are going to be able to sponsor these things. And as they get sponsored, Kim, let us know where do you think there's going to be?
Yeah,
And go ahead, Kim, sorry.
yeah, so we started with a short list of the locations that the infrastructure committee identified. I think there's about 15 or so. And so when you click on those green buttons and you scroll down the page, the available facilities become available. Keep scrolling. And so that's what we're starting with. As more locations are identified, we can continually add to these. Just didn't want to bite off too big of a chunk to start.
Excellent. So you can sponsor a porta potty or a dumpster at the location of your choice. Man, this opportunity is once in a lifetime. That's all.
It really is.
And I just want to confirm that that's sponsorship through cash. That doesn't mean that you go and clean the potty or empty the dumpster into the back of your Subaru yourself. No. You're
Yeah,
paying
thank you. I just saw
professionals.
those questions.
Yeah, we had a question over here, and I share that concern. But no, it's we're paying professionals to do this. So we're putting money back into the community to our local vendors who make number two their business. Thanks.
It sounds like a turnkey operation to me, Paul. So thanks for filling that in.
Oh. All right. So from infrastructure, we move on to enforcement and policy. There's been a lot of, thank you so much, John and Kim and Matt. Again, thanks, folks. There has been a lot of back and forth in the Q&A. I'm spending too much time over there. Sorry, I'm losing my ability to facilitate here. There's been a lot of chatter going back and forth about enforcement because this is something that people care very deeply about. Thankfully, we have Sheriff Braun here. Sheriff Braun has agreed to head up this enforcement group and has pulled her people together for meetings to figure out how we can increase enforcement presence and effectiveness. And as everybody knows and needs to acknowledge, it's very difficult in our big area. But one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning is we started this project with basically a survey of folks about, what were some of the needs or deficiencies that are out there with regard to existing law and policy. And I want to send a thanks out to Mono County Code Enforcement Officer Nick Chris for being the first one to bring forward that we have a need here in Mono County outside of the town of Mammoth for better code language to have it be illegal for people to basically camp on streets in cities, which, as many folks know, is happening pretty regularly right out in front of people's homes. Now, yes, some of these people might be your friends and family. This isn't what that's targeted for. This is targeted for the folks that are just pulling up and camping right in front of your house. We currently have language for county parks, but Mono County Public Works Director Tony DiBlino has stepped up and drafted new code language designed to restrict overnight camping within our communities, which in some of our communities became a real problem last year. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Sheriff Braun for enforcement and policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So if all of the things that we've already talked about work, we have the infrastructure, we have the education piece, we have the volunteerism, we have everything we need. You don't need enforcement because everybody's going to do what they're supposed to do. But the people who we're targeting for this, who aren't going to follow these rules, aren't listening to this meeting. So how do we deal with that? How do we enforce all of this? How do we make it happen? And let's be straight up front with this. We have capacity challenges. I don't have a ton of deputies. The Forest Service has 2 or 3 law enforcement officers. BLM has 2 law enforcement officers. We don't have a ton of people out there to make this happen, but we're going to try. We're going to do everything that we can. So one of the things that we've talked about is our ability to communicate with each other. And one of the beautiful things about the Eastern Sierra, and having worked in a big city, I'll tell you this doesn't happen other places, is we all work very well together. We all partner well together. CHP, BLM, Forest Service, Mono County, MLPD, we all work together. We all share the same channels. We all talk to one another. So we do talk, but we need to talk more and make sure that we're sharing information and talking with one another and noting the same problem sites and the same problem campers, and that we're working together. And so we've got that going. The maps and signage are huge. Important for people to know where they can and cannot be. So that app, the GIS interactive map, is going to be key in this, and being able to show people, no, look, you're here, you're on DWP land. You can't camp on DWP land. It's private property. They don't allow camping, let alone fires. So the map and the signage is really important. And one thing we want to make clear to everybody is one point of contact. If you see something, somebody camping where they're not supposed to camp, or having a fire at a dispersed campsite, or doing something they're not supposed to do, or leaving trash, or anything that you feel needs law enforcement attention outside of an emergency, dial our dispatch. It's here on the screen, 760-932-7549. And right away, you'll hear a recorded voice. That's Sarah, our public information officer, and you choose option 7 for dispatch. Now, if you have an emergency, if there is a raging fire, or you went to talk to somebody and they pointed a gun at you, or something horrible like that happened, you dial 911. Call 911 and let us know. It's going to be the same person, whether it's our dispatch or our 911. The benefit to 911 is it pinpoints where you are. It gives us the geolocation, and we can understand exactly where you are. And we also do have text to 911. If you're in a circumstance where you don't feel comfortable calling, if you can't, you don't want people to hear what you're doing, or you're hearing impaired, or whatever reason, we can use text to 911. The geolocation is not as strong. So we do, call if you can, text if you can't. But that's what we need, is for you to call us, and then we will get it out to the right people. We can call Forest Service dispatch, or we can call BLM. They actually share the same dispatch. If it's after hours, then we'll go out. If it's after hours and it's huge, then we'll call Forest Service and have them call somebody out. But, and if it's a fire issue, law enforcement issue, medical issue, we are the single point of communication. So just one place that you have to call. You don't have to go, oh, what the heck is the phone number for Forest Service? You just call the sheriff's office, and we'll get the right people out there. And I talked about this today with our supervision. We have an old habit of, if something happens on Forest Service land, we call Forest Service or BLM and say, here you go, you got a problem. Well, our new response to that is, hey, if you can't go, we're going to go. We're going to cover each other. We're going to handle this. But don't expect we're going to be there in 5 minutes. This is a big county. It's 3,400 square miles, and I have maybe 3 deputies and a sergeant working. Forest Service maybe has 1 or 2 people out, if they have that out. You're not going to get somebody right away. If it's an emergency, if it's a fire, we're going to have people rolling straight up. But if it's, hey, there's somebody camping out on Grant Lake and they're on DWP land, well, we're going to call DWP and let them know, and we'll get there when we can get there. But you have to understand, we do live far from services. And so when you're far from services, you have a longer response time. But we're working hard on it. We're working with all of our partners. We want this to work. We want people to be able to camp if they choose to disperse camp. We want them to enjoy their experience, but they don't have to have a campfire to enjoy their camping experience. They don't have to have the right to camp wherever they want. So we need to make sure that people are camping where they're supposed to camp and following the rules. So that's our job. And if you see somebody that's misbehaving or not doing what they're supposed to do, let us know. I did hear that earlier question about volunteer patrols. And I can't tell you to not go and cruise Scenic Loop or not go and cruise Shady Rest, but be smart about it. Don't go confronting people that you don't know and you don't know how they're going to behave. If they're already not following the rules, they're probably not going to listen to you either. So call the people with the badge and the gun that can go out and be a stronger presence. I don't want anybody to get hurt because they felt it was their job to enforce these rules. It's our job to enforce these rules. It's your job to let us know about it.
We have one question over here in chat, Supervisor Braun. Game wardens are out and about a lot. Are they part of this effort? Have they been included in these discussions?
You know, we haven't, that's a good point. We have not pulled them into this conversation. We should, because they are out and about. This is not their role. They're really out there looking for, you know, what do you have barbs on your hooks, or how many fish did you catch, or you have a permit for that. Their job is to protect our wildlife. But that is a good point, because they are out and about and they are law enforcement. So I will pull them into this conversation for sure.
Thank you very much. We've got another question here about DWP. Will DWP doing any direct enforcement on their property, potentially hiring private security, which would allow the sheriffs and public agencies to focus elsewhere? We have a couple.
So I believe we have DWP on the line. Maybe they can answer that. I don't think that they are, but if Adam or Elsa wants to answer that.
Yeah, this is Adam here, Paul. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. This is Adam Perez with Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Just what we do have for the DWPs, we don't have any direct, LAPD or even our officers from the DWP up here. We have is our aqueduct and reservoir keepers. They'll be responsible for basically going around and monitoring the DWP lands. And that information gets reported if there's a violation. They will go up and they will talk to individuals that are using our lands. And if it gets into a point of confrontation, then they will basically at that point contact Mono County Sheriff and bring them out if it starts to escalate into a serious problem. But last year we did this. We had after-hour patrols. We changed the timing of some of these employees to work after hours, just to make sure that we were able to capture some of the users who were starting to camp at around 7 o'clock, thinking that the DWP was no longer patrolling the areas. So that's how we plan on managing again this year. And we've given the information over to Sheriff Braun and her team about who to contact at the DWP if issues do come about and they need to contact us. So that's the current plan for this year.
Great, thank you so much. And also thank you, Adam, for all the work that your team has given to this effort. DWP has stepped up and helped produce signage. They have provided heavy equipment to help us clean up different areas. So you really have become part of the solution. So that's much appreciated. And with that, I'd like to
tag on to that.
Yeah, please.
Oh, tag onto that, Paul. We have the contact information for DWP. So if there's an issue on DWP land that you need attention. So Chris Leonard has emailed us a couple of times with some abandoned vehicles by the geothermal that looked like, well, they're probably on Forest Service land. Turns out it's DWP land. So we were able to get that information to them. So if you have an issue on DWP land, give, again, one point of contact, call us and we'll let them know. I did see a question in the chat about June Lake on the 4th of July. It was a mess. And I promise you, everybody, this 4th of July is going to be a bigger mess because 4th of July is on a Sunday, which makes the observed holidays Monday, which makes it a 3-day, 4-day, 5-day, 10-day weekend for most people. And there are going to be a lot of people here, and we're going to put our best efforts to it. We'll work with the Forest Service on parking at June Lake. So that turns into, that parking lot fills up quick, and then people just park wherever they want because they want to go to the lake. So we will work with them on that. That was quite a mishap last year, and we saw that, and we're working on that.
Thank you very much for answering that directly. I just found that question in my list. Thanks a lot. I'd like to turn it over now actually to Mono District Ranger Megan Maloney, who's going to give us an update on some of the efforts that the Forest Service has undertaken this year. Thank you so much, Sheriff Braun. Megan, could you please unmute yourself and take it away?
I can. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to participate in this evening's town hall. I really appreciate the opportunity to read what folks are sharing in the chat and the Q&A and sharing concerns and ideas for solutions. And I guess first and foremost, I want to share with all of you that are on this evening's call, we hear you. I have been hearing you loud and clear since I arrived on the district in April. The spectrum of issues and concerns, and they are all valid concerns. And so I want to acknowledge the fact that my staff and our fellow colleagues and coworkers and cooperating agencies, we have all heard you, and we've been working really diligently together on developing solutions. First and foremost, we were very quick this season prior to fishing opener to open a lot of our developed sites quickly, right? Because we learned from last year, all of what happened last season. We need to have a place to send people, right? With the facilities and services that they're going to be looking for. We opened other day use sites, restrooms. We placed portable potty units in cooperation with the county and these fantastic volunteer sponsorship programs. We're also ramping up to open our visitor centers, which is so critical in allowing for that first contact, right, with the public when they're coming through the area looking for information on fire restrictions and where to go, where to camp, what's appropriate, how you use public lands. So all of this is great, right? But at the same time, we still have a lot of work to do. And I want to emphasize the fact that to the concerns that are coming up in the chat box, we do not have the staffing to be everywhere at once over the 2.1 million acres that we manage. We just don't have that capacity. We do, however, have the capacity to leverage resources and to work with our partners and our community members and individuals who are interested in sharing in the stewardship of public lands. And to that end, I think it's incredibly important that we work together on collaborative solutions and continue these respectful conversations with each other and treat each other with respect and a lot of grace right now, because everyone is feeling the pressure of what happened last season, and we all want to get ahead of what's happening this season. And specifically, I guess what I would like to share with the group is a focused effort that we are considering right now for Grant Lake and some of the things that we've been doing in response to community concerns. So first and foremost, when I got here, there were a lot of voices and a spectrum of voices over concerns regarding dispersed camping overnight occupancy at Grant Lake. And truth be told, one of my first responses to that was to go right to my ultimate tool that I don't like to use, which is the potential for a closure, for a short-term emergency forced order, closing that for overnight use. That was my ultimate go-to. I really wasn't very interested in having to do that, but I was prepared to do that based on two major concerns: wildland fire risk and water quality. I really appreciated some community members reaching out to me and sharing their concerns over that potential restriction. And we actually had some very productive conversations. We've been working with LADWP, Mono County, Bob Gardner, Paul McFarland, Matt Perillo, and these community members on how do we address the situation at Grant Lake, because I think that's a great case study. And quite honestly, I would love to see some change down there and be able to prevent what we saw last year. And so to that end, this week, LADWP, Mono County, Paul McFarland, volunteers all rolled their sleeves up and went across that area around Grant Lake, especially I think on the east shore and on the south end in the inlet, and removed 30 plus dispersed campfire rings and created a clean slate out there to manage. And that's huge. We would not have been able to do that with the couple of crew members I had, even though they chipped in. It was a community effort, including DWP, in resetting the situation there at Grant Lake. So we've cleaned up the dispersed sites. We've removed trash. We have now worked with DWP, who has generously offered their sign shop along with their highway display signs to provide better information to the public and more accessible information on how to appropriately use your public lands. So you'll be seeing signs coming up before Memorial Day weekend that address a lot of the concerns that are coming up in the chat box, because we really want to set folks up for success, right? Dispersed camping is an appropriate use of National Forest System lands when it's done the right way. And we want to set people up for success to do it the right way. So this is the process that we have in place right now. We are going to also increase our patrols and public contacts. I've asked my fire prevention staff, along with our OHV rec techs and other personnel in uniform, to be sure to reach out to the public and make more contacts this summer, now that we know how we can do it safely, given the environment of COVID. So I'm hoping that this multi-pronged approach will result in a change in behavior down at Grant Lake. However, penultimately, I have a responsibility to the resource, to the community, given concerns over wildland fire. Even though we're now in fire restrictions, I still have concerns over the potential for a wildland fire incident out there, as well as water quality issues, because we can all recognize it's pretty hard to be successful down there at Grant Lake in terms of managing your human waste. The situation down there, the lake shore is not the right place to be burying human waste. And so we realize that that's probably going to be the biggest challenge. But I guess I'd like to promise the community, I'm listening to you. I hear what the concerns are. We want to set folks up for success this summer down there. We're going to keep an eye on it. We're going to monitor it. But ultimately, it really does need to be a shared stewardship and shared ownership of the situation down there, because the Forest Service, as much as I would like us to be everywhere at once, we don't have the resources to do that. And at the same time, I really want to be able to support the community in the outcomes and objectives they want to see down there. So just know that we're keeping an eye on that situation through Memorial Day, and come mid-June, we'll reassess. And I'm really hopeful that we've set the scene up for folks to be successful in responsibly utilizing their public land down there. But stay tuned, because I'm also prepared to pivot and address growing concerns if they exist. So with that, Paul, I'll shush myself.
No, thanks so much. I'm sure we'll have more questions. Thank you so much, Megan. I really think that the Forest Service has showed up in real time this year. And it's made a huge difference. So Matt, can we go on to the next slide? All right. We're going to get into our open verbal questions here in a second. And, you know, we've talked a lot today about short-term solutions, things that we can implement right now. We've touched on some more longer ones, things like permitting and a fee structure. We know we need new hosts and new ambassadors. We've talked about, you know, making the map a static printed map. We're just not there yet. But, you know, before we get into the question and answer section, I just want to, you know, it sounds trite in some ways, but it's really not, because these are public lands and we're the public and we have to make them work. We've got to figure out how we can be the solution for some of these places, because frankly, there's part of me that's really worried we're going to lose a lot of what we love if we don't get ahead of the recreation that we're seeing now. Dispersed camping is just one part of it. You know, the ways we can do that, many of us know what we're doing when we go outside. We camp like a pro. Other people see that. We spread by our example. We can spread the word to others. You know, we can utilize social media both to share good behavior as well as identify bad. We can use the materials that Alicia's group has put together and get those out there. You know, we can help support temporary infrastructure. I know it's not the best solution to be having to pay for a lot of bathrooms and dumpsters, but people have trash and we have to put it somewhere. And it's best to not just bury our head, but figure out how we can address it. You know, we can give back to the land through volunteer days, groups like the Eastern Sierra Trash Eliminators, who's just done an amazing job across the Eastern Sierra, as well as, like Deb mentioned earlier, we can come up with our own ideas and figure out how to make those happen, how we can organize patrols and do them safely and effectively. And then, like Sheriff Braun said, one point of contact. We can contact the agencies. We really need to resist vigilantism, frankly, and let the professionals do their work. And we can do this. We have to do it because we all really love this place and we want to continue to enjoy it. So I see we've got 2 hands raised here in the participant list. Again, if you have some questions you'd like to ask, whoa, now we have a lot more. If you have questions you'd like to ask, go down and click on the raise hands and I'll get to you. I'll ask you to unmute your phone. I'm going to reiterate to treat others as you would like to be treated. Let's be respectful. Let's try to figure out how to make this work, recognizing that all the people on this call, we're building this train as we're hurtling down the tracks. So first up to speak is Mary Pearson. Would you like to go ahead and unmute yourself, please?
Hi, thanks, Paul. Can
Yeah,
you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go for it.
Sheriff Ron, thank you, by the way, for telling me you have a plan, because I was down there. I went down for a swim at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on July 4th last Saturday, last year on Saturday. And the people at the campground who own the campground were completely freaked out. It was completely out of control. So I'm very happy to hear this. And thank you everyone for all of your, hard work, et cetera. Here's my question. Where's Rusty? Where's Altera? Where's Mammoth Mountain in this conversation? They benefit more than all of us combined. Where are they? Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody on the panel want to take that, or are we going to answer that with deafening silence?
We will give them an opportunity to contribute to this effort. Have no doubt of that.
Well, I hope so, because otherwise I've already made their lives miserable earlier this year when they shut down my Icon Pass on June Mountain. And if you need somebody who doesn't care about taking arrows in the back as a retired executive, I'm happy to make their lives miserable. Bob Gardner, you know me. You've already heard from me over the years.
Thanks,
We will
Mary.
give them an opportunity to contribute to this effort. As I said, Mary, I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah,
Matt?
Mary, I think from the town council perspective, I've got a meeting with them actually later this week. And I'll certainly make them aware of this tremendous effort that's frankly so far exceeded all of our expectations, but I'll carry that message forward. Thanks.
Matt, did you have a response?
Yeah, I was just going to say, first of all, Mary, I think I've got some other affairs that perhaps you can put in order for me if that offer stands. I have not made an ask that was not answered by Altera or Mammoth. So, some of that onus perhaps is on myself and on all of us on this call here to do better in making that ask. And I think Supervisor Gardner's comment is correct, that we need to follow up with them and do our due diligence.
Thanks, folks, very much. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question so we can get going because we're running out of time. Fletcher, go ahead and please unmute yourself. Thanks for joining.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go for it, man.
All right, so one of my thoughts was on the human waste issue. This is just an idea that I found from somewhere else. We go to Utah, southern Utah desert, like twice a year to camp. And I was surprised to find out that when you go camping there, you're required to bring a portable toilet with you. And I know up here you're still required to bury it and things like that, but it doesn't seem to always happen. In order to do that, you have to have a shovel, and education. And I just was thinking maybe that's one thing that could be an option as far as, like if you're out in the southern Utah desert and a ranger shows up and says, hey, let me see your toilet. If you don't have one, they give you a ticket and tell you to leave. So I don't know if that could help a little bit. And I know, I saw one of the comments in the Q&A was about human waste and garbage at the Conway Summit Overlook, which is definitely not a dispersed camping area. So I'm not sure a lot of these issues are specific to dispersed camping, but I think this conversation could go a long ways towards just helping with problems that come along with dispersed camping. But they also are related to a bunch of other issues that we may be having in the area.
You're right. It's all tied together.
Yeah. So, maybe looking at other options, other forests, other ways of doing things, see how other places handle the situations like these. And maybe it's some place where we could all get together and put our ideas down and submit our ideas and just kind of share ideas and brainstorm would be great.
Yeah, well, you see, Matt and I's contact information is down there on the bottom of the slide. Please reach out to us. We hope that this is not the end of this conversation, that we're just this is just another step in a larger conversation about making this place work. So thanks so much. Gary Nelson, go ahead and please unmute yourself.
Good evening. I used to work down at Sequoia National Forest in the lower Kern Canyon area. And boy, did they have some law enforcement problems down there in the campgrounds. And finally, the Forest Service tried to handle it, but some of their people actually got beat up there in the campgrounds trying to deal with it. So what they did was coordinate with the Kern County sheriffs, and they would send the Forest Service patrol people down in civilian clothes with their handheld radios. And if they saw stuff getting out of hand, they would call in the sheriffs who were staged nearby at Democrat Fire Station. And this worked pretty well. And something along those lines might be what we need, given that we don't have a whole lot of enforcement resources to go around, mainly just to see where the problem is and then coordinate the efforts of the different agencies to deal with it. So thank you.
Sheriff Braun, you talked a little bit about that coordination really is taking on a new level of importance this year. You need to unmute, make sure you unmute yourself. Sorry.
I was double muted because I have noisy people downstairs at my house. And so I muted my phone and the computer. Apologies. For sure, we always work together. We have a really good collaborative relationship between all our law enforcement here, but especially this summer when we know things are gonna go sideways, we need to work with each other and come up with plans. So that's a great idea that Gary had of like a plainclothes element from Forest Service and a backup from the Sheriff's Office. It's certainly something that we talk about. Laura James and I talk about, we can talk about some approaches that we should have to problem areas. You know, right now we don't have the problem areas. We'll see how they develop over the summer. I love that Megan has good hopes for Grant Lake. I have fingers crossed for Grant Lake because Grant Lake was a nightmare last year, especially with the DWP aspect to it, because that's where people can't camp and they camp anyway and then remove signs. So we're going to be super tight on the enforcement there, and I really hope that it can stay up and about.
Thanks very much. We have a question in the chat about implementing a dispersed camping permit. This came up early in our discussions. Leslie, are you on? Would you like to address this question? If she's not here, I can, oh, there she is, yeah.
No, I'm right here, just trying to get off mute, just like Ingrid was. Yeah, so the question is just about dispersed camping in general.
It's about implementing a dispersed camping permit, much like a campfire permit.
Yes. So, you know, that is something that we can certainly look at, right? I think the issue with it is that it would really be an enforcement tool, not an enforcement tool, sorry, it would be an educational tool for us, you know, much in the way that that campfire permits are an education tool, right? You have to take a little quiz before you can actually get your permit, right? The enforcement piece of a dispersed camping permit, that would be the harder piece for us to consider. But certainly as an educational tool, sure. Invite people to come and take a quiz about dispersed camping and, you know, how to leave no trace and how to put out a campfire. And then they get a little badge or a little, you know, a little permit that says that, you know, that they've been certified, right?
Great, thanks very much. We got Mammoth Media Productions. You've got your hand raised. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
Excellent. Yeah, I just wrote a little excerpt I think I'll read now. On August 3rd, 2020, Mono County made a post entitled, "Like all parents, Mother Nature loves good manners." From that post, I would like to read an excerpt from Manner 8. Manner 8, social media do's and don'ts. Keep wild places wild. Don't geotag your Instagram photos. Special places can be destroyed by instant fame. From an post May 10th, 2021. Views from around Mono County last week. Can you name all the locations below? Every photo was named with 95 shares. May 12th, 2021. There's still a lot of snow in the higher elevations in Mono County right now. This is Moat Lake above Virginia Lakes on Sunday. In fact, every photo posted tells you everything you need to know to find that place. Mono County, I'm charging you to practice what you preach. If 100% of your marketing aims to be towards education only, we wouldn't be having this problem. Even Visit Mammoth doesn't drop names like you. If you look at Visit Mammoth's last few posts, they're 100% educational, except the one they shared from your page, blowing up the last POW day in Virginia. When I moved here 8 years ago, it was a sin to so much give directions to the hot tubs. Every new place I found was an adventure, and it connected me to this place on a level that you can only experience through exploration. No maps, no guidebooks. You had to make friends. Places that I once loved, I now visit in sadness because of what has happened in the last 8 years. Drones buzzing, trash everywhere, and people who have no respect for the land or Mother Nature frolic about like they're at Disneyland. How did we get here? Dispersed camping is a right of the American people to enjoy free and open spaces. And right now in our area, out of control dispersed camping is a symptom of a problem that needs to be addressed. Dispersed camping is not a crime. Inviting people over without educating them should be. But I'm afraid the damage may be beyond repair. We have over-invited our capacity. How could we possibly find the resources to educate this many people? It would take an entire marketing budget. But wouldn't that still be considered great marketing? Feeding people positive educational messages only, having clinics, camps, etc. All of this would be money better spent. A few less people may come to town, but the quality of our visitors will improve. Finally, Mono County, it is up to you to step up to the plate and stop making it so difficult for businesses to do business in Mono County. Mono County, you should contribute to the expansion and addition of private campgrounds, where local landowners can benefit instead of just picking up the trash. Stop marketing special places, work with local landowners to create more options instead of pricing them out of their projects. Only market education and the private businesses that pay your salary. It sounds like you're on the right track with your campaign, but it doesn't scratch the surface to the damage that has been done. I hope you take it more seriously than manner number 8. That is all.
Thanks very much, John. It's appreciated. You're right. We can all be the solution as we go forward to try to help preserve this place over time. We got one last question. We're a little bit over time, but Ron Day, you've had your hand up for a long time. Ron, go ahead and unmute yourself, please. Go ahead, Ron. Just click unmute. You'll be on.
I want to thank everybody that participated in this forum. I think it was good. I questioned some of the people answers. I think it's important that we look to solve some of the problems in the campsites, especially the fires. Without that, it's not a big deal. But creating a fire is not good. And I want to thank Stacy and John for responding to me.
Great. Thank you so much, Ron. You're right. Fire in many people's minds is the biggest threat that's out there. Thanks, Ron, very much. You know, with that, I think we're going to come to a close. We're 5 minutes over time, but I really want to thank everybody for participating. I encourage you all to reach out to Matt, to myself, to any of the other panelists that are here. Please visit essrp.org/camping, and let's have a phenomenal summer. More and more people are coming. We know they are. We live in a phenomenal place. It's really up to us to make sure that we keep it this way by educating, stewarding, and setting an example. So thank you all so much. And thank you all to the panelists. who are here today, gave their time to be here, and also who spent so much time over the last few months building this train as we went down the track. Thank you so much. Again, like I said, this isn't the end. This is just another step in a longer conversation. So let's keep it going. Let's use the materials we've created. Let's support some dumpsters and potties. Let's do it right. And let's get outside. Flowers are beautiful right now. Thanks everybody very much.